I think that COVID was a net positive for my business and for me as a professional. I think I connected with more people that were more interesting, more whatever you want to call it, more impactful to my life. And from a business standpoint, I think that if I didn't change the things that I changed, the business was going to die without COVID.
Welcome, Marcel. Great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. You are the king of the industry podcast for the entertainment industry. So this feels a bit odd that I'm interviewing the person who is the usual interviewer rather than the interviewee. So it's going to be a different experience for you, possibly, and for me, it's a little bit intimidating to be interviewing you rather than the other way around.
Well, thank you for all of that. And I don't know about king, but certainly I started a little earlier than most people did in our industry in podcasting. And I think what happened, a lot of people started podcasts around COVID or during COVID because they were like, what the hell am I going to do? I'll sit and tell stories. It'll be fun. And as soon as they got back to work, they just went, I don't have time for this crap. You don't really make money on podcasting unless you're Joe Rogan. And you know, you've got all this work flying at you. So it's like, I got to find the time to do this. And I don't know if you have someone who helps you. I do. And so she does a lot of the scheduling and editing and stuff like that.
For now, it's just me. So yeah. It's taking on the work, but never mind. We enjoy it. Do you want to give a bit of we got into the chat already. Do you want to give a bit of background, who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I am, my name is Marcel, and I am the CEO and founder of a small little group of companies. Our parent company now is called GearNet Holdings. And the main company that I've been in for 24 years now is called GearSource. For those outside the industry, it's basically like eBay or Reverb, but for the concert, sound, lighting, staging, video industry. So it's a marketplace, global marketplace, where we help companies to buy or sell primarily used inventory when they're going to buy new stuff from guys like Ben. And then another company that we just launched in the fourth quarter of last year, 2025, is called GearShare. And so it's sort of the Airbnb of that industry. When companies need something for a short period of time or for a run, for a tour for 20 weeks or something, instead of purchasing it, sometimes the math works a little bit better on what we call sub-renting or cross-renting in our industry. And until now, that's been a completely manual function. Really one of the last entirely manual industries that I'm aware of. And so my quest was to not only digitize that process, but to also make it simpler, make it faster and easier globally to find those pockets of inventory. So that's GearShare. And then to stick with the gear theme, we're building a third company, which is called Gear IQ. And that is to create analytics and statistics and data sets around the assets, this valuable equipment. The average lighting fixture that's sold that you see at concerts and shows might be $10,000 or $12,000 per light. And some of these shows have 500 or 600 of these lights. I was talking to someone last week and they said they were just finalizing a spec. I forget what tour it was. It was one of these Korean K-pop bands. And it was 1,700 moving lights on it. And so if you times 1,700 times $10,000 or $12,000, not everyone wants to go out and purchase this stuff. So sometimes we're doing a cross rental, you know, so that's really what our business is all about. And this Gear IQ thing is going to provide data and analytics on everything from values to longevity to what gets the highest requests to where are there holes in the market? Where do we have not enough of this or too much of this? And for the first time ever, companies on the buying side, so these large rental and production companies who are doing all of these shows will actually be able to make data-backed decisions on what to buy. Because in the past, and maybe even a little bit right now, I know that as a manufacturer and a salesperson, I would go to shows and take people out for a nice steak dinner and then convince them to spend $1 million. And they should probably be a little smarter than that and a little more scientific than that, and buy things that are going to bring them the most ROI or the most value. And so that's what we're providing, is a data set that's going to allow them and empower them to make those types of decisions better. But also to provide manufacturers and people like yourself, Ben, with more analytics on not only things that need to be built for the market, but where do our products line up against other competitors' products as far as pricing stability, trends on the used market? Like, are our used prices going down, going up? Are they dropping like a rock? How do we compare to other manufacturers out there? What has the best longevity in their trending pricing? Is it this type of product or this type of product? And so manufacturers can make better decisions as well. So, that's sort of where we're at. How I got into it is I started as a musician many, many years ago. I realized that I was spending more money on my bar tabs than I was earning playing in these bands. And
the life of every musician's the same, though, right?
Yeah. It certainly was my life. And I wasn't in it for the art. I was never an artist. I just wanted to go have fun and meet girls. And I did a lot of both of those things. And so in the late stages of my teens, I decided to leave being a touring musician and become a sales person first, and then eventually a business person. And so my career started at 19, really learning the ropes, selling guitars and musical equipment to bands, and then eventually transitioning that into sound and lighting equipment to whether it was nightclubs or churches, theaters, whatever. And then I was hired by Martin Professional, where I became one of their their sales manager, and had no idea what I was doing. I originally was the Western U.S. Regional sales manager. And other than Las Vegas and Los Angeles, just for the NAMM shows, I had never been to the Western U.S. I was from Canada. I didn't know my way around. So I had to learn product and systems and processes, but also territory and companies. I didn't have any relationships with these companies. So I think I was a good enough salesperson that I was able to use my chops to get through that. And then I rose up through Martin and other companies and created GearSource way back in 2002.
And you talk about the two new companies. Those two new companies started, especially the data analytics one, is something we as an industry don't have much of. We were talking off air, right? We're a small, we do some really big high profile things, Olympics, opening ceremonies, Taylor Swift, as we were talking about before we come on air. But that is a sort of thing where we're a really niche, small industry that's so insular at times. That doesn't exist in our world. Whereas, I think most people, if you're in other sectors, you might go, well, of course we can get data on this. We can get data on mobile phone use, all this sort of thing, those big things. But we just don't have that because it's needed, but nobody's there to do it.
It's funny you say that because so my chief technology officer, who's helping me build all of these crazy AI things that we're building and other technology things, he comes from the construction world. And there is a company in the construction world who has created something very similar to Gear IQ for the construction business. But the bigger thing is, I don't know if you've ever tried to do any kind of digital ads for your podcast or anything else, but one of the challenges, or even on LinkedIn, if you're just out there farming on LinkedIn or searching for clients on LinkedIn, we don't fall into a category. There is no category for live events professionals or, live events, lighting, sound, video, staging people. There's no such category. So some will be in something called electronics. Some will be in the electrical industry. Some will be in the just crazy entertainment sometimes. But so whether it's social media, Facebook, Meta, or LinkedIn, we don't fit into anything. So when you go out there, you can buy audiences, for example, on social media, but there's no way to buy our audience because we don't exist as far as they're concerned. Although we're roughly, arguably a $60 billion industry overall, we don't exist somehow. So fixing some of that, and you've seen these PDF reports that companies can buy, right? I'm sure you've seen them even internally. You've probably shared
We get them. Yeah, we get them.
The reports for our industry are terrible because they're taking such a small data set because it's voluntary. It's basically people providing this information. We're providing data directly from our systems. So we've been selling used equipment for 24 years this year. And we have all of that data and history of trends and pricing, and are things going up or down or out, or, are moving lights making more money in Europe than they are in the United States? Just all kinds of crazy information. And so we're packaging that to be available to, again, manufacturers and users. One of the things we'll do for end users, for example, is like, let's say you're specifying a package into the abyss of inavailability, and manufacturers like that because they can go sell into that inavailability and make the products available. But that's not always an option. And so what if instead we were to provide data to that lighting designer, front of house engineer, whatever they are, and say, specify your system based on this package of availability? Like, the Olympics is a great example. The Winter Olympics are about to start. I'm sure in Italy, you couldn't find a moving light if your life depended on it. And so what if I have a tour that's going into rehearsals in Italy in March? And it's probably a bad example, but it's truthful. I've got a tour going into rehearsals in March, and I need 500 moving lights. Wouldn't it help to know what's actually still showing as available out there, as opposed to just going, I'm going to pick the newest fixture and I'm going to get thousands of them? Well, guess what? Maybe you won't. So yeah, data is going to become a really, really big thing, not only for our company, but for, I think, the entire industry, because we just have a very unique data set that other companies don't have.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're talking about we're sort of forgotten. I had an email from somebody who's doing some work for the industry body in the UK. In the UK, every company has a tax code. So you have to have a tax, you sit into a category, tick in a category. And he came to me and said, we don't have a category for the entertainment industry. So you have to sort of tag electronics or, events or whatever, but you don't have one for, we provide lighting and sound. And so it was really interesting hearing him. He's trying to work with the government to bring a simple thing like a tax code, which you'd think would be appropriate, but
that became a huge problem during COVID. And because, the governments were giving away money based on the industries that you were in and things. And we didn't have the codes. Like, we had companies that were all over the place. So they were packaging us as a very small industry because we were a bunch of small industries as opposed to one larger industry. And, Michael Strickland from Bandit Lights made up a very interesting quote that was used and overused during COVID, is that the larger, sometimes even smaller industries than ours, but more integrated industries who are all using the same code, they're all rowing in the same direction. They were showing up at the government in these battleships, and we were showing up in 100 little canoes, and we had no voice. So very important and a big missing thing in our industry.
Yeah, and I think going back to that point as well, I think virtually anyone who's listened to this podcast, hopefully around the world, has been to a concert or been to an event. And if you go to these events, it's so integral to, you don't go and see Coldplay and with none of the projection, if that won't work, the whole auditorium lighting up, the sound, it's integral to the whole performance. It's why we do it. It's why I do it. But if the governments aren't seeing that and everything like that, it's a challenge. But also, there's a point, it's also a small, as we said at the start, it's a small industry. It's a niche little industry. So these tools just don't exist as an industry to get out there and do. It's only $1 billion industry or whatever. And in lighting in Europe, for example, that's, who's going to research that sort of, for example?
Yeah, we are.
Which is great. Which is great.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges and opportunities you see? I mean, you've got a very, very, very diverse set of businesses and what you're doing. What do you see?
Well, I'm seeing business challenges in our industry. I'm seeing industry challenges as a challenge to my business. So when companies have lots of money, they buy new equipment. When companies don't have lots of money, they tend to hoard their old equipment. So both of those impact my ability to do what we do in the market, because we're always counting on basically the recycling of inventory. And we want you to sell companies new inventory, because then we're helping them rid their old inventory usually. And also they're adding more gear onto the sharing platform, et cetera. So, I'm seeing sort of, if I go wider, I'm seeing a lot of problems related to costs, labor costs, logistics costs, just costs of materials, costs of products, especially, when you add on some of the complicated geopolitics that are going on, and, most of it coming from our country with the tariffs and things. And so, that's adding a lot of complication for companies. And again, I told you before we got on this that I've spoken to relatively large businesses, over $100 million businesses in our industry, manufacturers or suppliers, who are just saying, I don't know if I'm going to survive all of this. Like, our margins are going down constantly. Our revenue's staying pretty flat, but our costs are going up and our margins are therefore going down. And, we can't sort of raise prices and fight our way through this. We have to just kind of wait it out and hope that it changes. And hope, as they say, is not a strategy. And I think our industry has been working on a bit of a hope strategy. But if I go even broader and I look at businesses as a whole, and let's touch on to the AI topic, I happen to know a whole lot about it. I, for one, have really stopped talking so much about AI, because I think it's offensive when you get into a creative industry like ours. People don't want to hear about it. And I can completely understand and sympathize with that feeling, because we're creatives. You're going to take away my creativity. You're going to take away my creations. You're going to take away my right to IP. I own these designs. I made these designs, and AI can just, you could talk into a console. You could do this today, but nobody's obviously brave enough to make it happen, and I don't blame them. But you could talk into a console and say, hey, remember that look that you saw 2 years ago on the whatever show? Let's just replicate that look. I'm still, though, a firm believer that AI is not going to take away Ben's job. It's going to take away, AI is going to take away the jobs of people who are not using AI. So a person plus AI is going to take the job of a person who's not using AI. That I firmly believe, because today I'm doing probably 300% more than I could do 3 years ago. I'm just accomplishing so much because I have many minions who are working for me now that are called AI agents, AI bots, AI, just LLMs like ChatGPT and Grok and stuff. And so I firmly believe in AI as a supportive tool. I don't necessarily want to see AI taking away jobs, unless they're jobs that either have to disappear because the company is going to go out of business unless they can replace that particular role or whatever, or just make the business more efficient to a point where it can survive. Like, survival is very important to me, of all the businesses in our industry and others. But AI is really going to change the picture. And for those who I guess don't believe that, I feel sorry for you, because you're in for some surprises coming forward. All you need to do is go to Austin or Phoenix or San Francisco and jump in a taxi, and you'll realize, okay, stuff has gotten real different, because there's no driver and some of them have no steering wheel. So
yeah, I mean, I lived in LA for 4 months back in 24, and I sat in those cabs with no drivers, and it was a very weird experience the first time I got one of them. It's just the most, you don't have a driver to talk to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're fortunate in our industry that you're never going to get an AI to load a truck. You're never going to get AI to put up lights or rig stuff, right? So I think it's where AI can be useful.
I don't say never. I don't say never, because I think loading trucks is going to be done by robots at some point.
Cleaning lights, let's say cleaning lights or testing stuff. But I think AI in the right way in rental companies and manufacturing, there's places where AI will work for us, right? And it can be a tool. As you said, you're being much more productive because of AI, right?
Well, but I think that's going to continue to evolve. Like, you know, I was inside one of the Christie Lights shops yesterday, and they showed me their moving light stations. And, you know, they've rigged a system that they custom made, and it's not robotic or anything, but basically you roll flight cases in, these things come down, they grab the lights, they pull them up. There's already a program running to test them all. And, you know, then they drop them back down. They put the lights back in the cases. They go back up. Nobody's even touching that moving light. And it's being fully tested and run through everything. So, and as far as AI is never going to repair a moving light or clean a moving light. What happens when, you know, remember China's miles ahead of us on some of this stuff, because China is now looking to lower the cost of an already low cost of labor, and which means basically removing the labor for the most part. And so China is going to develop a moving light that is purpose designed, purpose built to be cleaned by robots. And, you know, so it's going to go into a thing. The thing is going to go burp, 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 clean a bunch of stuff, check for any, it's probably going to plug into a diagnostics thing and check if there's anything wrong with it. If there is, it'll go through a different process. You know, like, I see this coming. You know, it's just down to whether or not it's something that the industry is going to buy. And if the industry is going to say no to that, then it won't come quickly. And that's what's happening with consoles right now. Obviously, audio and lighting consoles could be run by AI today. You don't necessarily need those operators, but I think the operators are going to stick around for a while, because I think that's too big of a change. Just like possibly an airline pilot for a commercial airline. I think people would freak out walking on and seeing that there's nobody in the cockpit, you know, or there's no cockpit. You know, what do you need a cockpit for? So, you know,
it's scary, because I mean, going back to that car thing, I was looking a bit of research on it, and they were looking at the new design of cars. You're just going to sit at the next generation. They're using Jaguars at the moment with Waymo, but it was looking and going, we're going to design something where there's no steering wheel. There's just a couple of seats, like on a sofa, and you just sit in it with no window potentially out, and that's that. And which is just mind blowing at this moment. It's proper sort of, you know, sci-fi of 50 years ago, which they said the future would be with flying cars and all that. But it's coming, right?
You know, it's funny, because it is coming, definitely, in every single possible way. But yesterday I drove up to Orlando. It's about a 2.5 hour drive from my house, and I have a Ford SUV now, and it's brand new, and it's got this thing called Blue Cruise in it. And I've never done any kind of a self-driving thing where I'm in it, like a Tesla or whatever, right? And so this thing popped up and it said, Blue Cruise is available, push this button. And I'm like, what's that mean? So I pushed the button, and all of a sudden the car is driving itself at the speed that I set it at. If you want to change lanes, you just kind of touch the turn signal, and it waits for a safe moment to change lanes and goes into the other lane. You touch the turn signal again, it'll turn back into the other lane. And so I drove 2.5 hours each way without holding the steering wheel. Like, every once in a while I had to grab it because it sensed some sort of danger or a problem or something, and it'd say, grab the steering wheel. And I would, and then it'd put it right back into this Blue Cruise mode. Wild. And it was pretty cool. Like, it wouldn't let me read text though. Like, I tricked it a couple times, because it's actually monitoring your eyes. Are your eyes looking forward? Or whereas Tesla will let you lay back and take a nap, this one won't. This one hasn't gone that far yet, but it was pretty cool. I really quite enjoyed it. It was less stressful than driving yourself, you know?
And you come out refreshed at the other end. And if from a sales point of view, your sales background, I do sales all the time. If you come out a 3-hour drive, you get out knackered, and then you've got to talk. Definitely. And you've got to be customer. Definitely. If you could just enjoy the drive, it's a lot easier, right? As we were talking off again pre-recording, we were talking about how our industry doesn't move, you know, it's quite slow to adopt to things, right? We are quite, there's a lot of people who've been in it a long time, and we've done it this way, and we've always done it that way, and whatever. And so that's quite a shift. And as you said, the creative part, people are scared that you hit a button and say, I want Coldplay to be lit like this with 20 songs. Here are the songs, make it work, and they'll do it. That's a big shift for our industry, right?
It's wild though that we love new technology when it comes to products. You know, like we have an insatiable appetite for, you know, that new feature that nobody has. as you know, selling moving lights, it's always about the one thing you don't have. That's the thing that they need, and that's the spec breaker. And you're like, what? We just created the most incredible light ever, and now you want one more feature. So, so they're not adverse at all to new products and new technology in those products, tools that are going to help them, but they just don't see, and our industry doesn't see AI as a tool, but as a weapon. And I understand that. Like I said, I'm not arguing with that. I'm not saying that that's a terrible thing or that they're dumb or anything like that. I completely get it. And maybe if I was in a different part of our industry or something, I might feel more strongly about it. But I'm very excited about AI in the future. I'm getting to an age where longevity is obviously a concern for me. And I think longevity is going to be solved in the next 5 to 10 years where, I've listened to very smart people say that they're going to double our expected lifespan within the next 10 years. And that means that humans are going to live to 150 years old regularly, and so, that changes everything, from a standpoint of finance. And you're right now saving, thinking, my retirement, I'm going to need about 10 years of income. What if that became 70 years all of a sudden? And you're like, oh shit, I didn't save enough.
We're going to be doing sales meetings at the age of 100 at trade shows, right?
Isn't that going to be funny?
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Your retirement age, I think my retirement age in the UK is 67 or 68, but by the time I get there, probably 70.
Yeah.
And I think
they'll just keep bumping it up.
And my gran, I think, retired at 55 or 53 or something like that. And she was late retiring. Do you know what I mean? So it's just mad how...
But that's a good thing, though, isn't it?
Generation
Isn't that a good thing?
Right?
Isn't that a good thing? Here's what I like about the longevity thing. Isn't necessarily that I want to live to 150 years old. It's that I want to be healthy up until, a couple weeks before I die. I don't want to go through the 10 years of dementia or 10 years of heart problems or cancer or whatever. I want right up till, a week or so before. I'd love to be right up until the day I die. I cough a couple times and then die. I'd love that. That'd be perfect. As opposed to going through 10 years of debilitating illness and expense and all of those things. So I'm very, very bullish on the idea of what healthcare is going to do in the next 10 years. I think there's going to be just scientific breakthrough after scientific breakthrough that's going to, just improve our lives from that standpoint. Now, there's an offset to that. There's a lot of downside to all of it too. So.
Yeah, we'll see. It's seeing all those reports that they can cure, it will be able to do the sums to cure cancer and cure all those things. It's phenomenal. That's where I see the positive to AI, right? We can talk about doing shows, whatever, but that's where AI should be going, and that's where we should be looking at it as a tool.
Well, what about the other thing where, you're on a Saturday, you've got 10 things you really love to do that you're going to do on a Saturday. And then there's 10 things, oh God, I got to take care of these 10 things. What if AI could just solve those 10 things for you? Or even 5 of them? What if AI could take care of 5 of those?
It won't clean the car for me, which I've got to do tomorrow, right?
So it will. It will.
One day.
It will. Yeah, everyone's going to have a household robot that is going to make you breakfast in the morning, clean your house, go outside, wash the car, cut the grass. It's going to do all those things for you.
So I've seen one which was advertised, which you could rent one for about $1,500. It was advertised. It was for a while in the States. It was like facelift. It was like a robot, humanoid robot, but they were renting it $1,500, $2,000 a month or something. And it said you can do basic tasks, but they plan to extend it. And you sort of go, well, if it will make my dinner, I hate cooking. Not particularly good chef either, but that's not a point. I just hate it. So could I have a robot cook me dinner and tell me what I need to buy, and it orders the food? I would invest in that. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
it would change my life.
It won't even tell you. It won't even tell you. It won't. You'll say, basically, you'll sit down probably once a month and say, let's make a meal plan for this month. And you'll decide the things you want to eat. It's going to do all the grocery shopping. It's going to go to, online and figure it all out and get all that stuff to happen. You won't even have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. As a group of my friends, we use GTP quite a lot, and we do every month. We ask it what it knows of us, and every month it's just gaining more and more and more insight into all of us. And we post it into this group and go, right, tell ChatGPT tonight what it knows of us, and you get so much detail. It's like
That's cool.
It knows us. It knows your inner thinking more than you know your inner thinking at times, and it's
mine
scary.
does. Mine
Scary.
does. I'll tell you what. I go for a 4-mile walk every morning, and if I'm dealing with a challenge, whether it's something legal that I'm working on, or something that I didn't say illegal, something legal that I'm working on. Like I'm working on I'm putting a company together. I'm building a legal document for an incoming partner, something like that, or some sort of a challenge that's just got my brain full and I can't move it to the next stage. I'll have a conversation with whether it's ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini. I use all three of them. I bounce around a little bit, and all of them know everything about my business. Like I'll ask a question and it'll say, "Oh, that's a great question. Is this for GearShare or GearSource?" And I'll say GearSource. "Oh, well, because you're using these technologies on GearSource, here's what I might recommend, blah, blah, blah." And I'll literally have a 1-hour conversation with AI while I'm out for my walk. And that may sound lunatic, crazy, but I do it all the time. I believe that every company, every business owner out there right now is struggling with some of these thoughts. Should I replace my entire staff with AI, or should I just be really scared that AI is going to come in and steal my business? And the answer to both of those is potentially yes. Like so many businesses are going to be put, like people think, okay, it's just the really cheap labor, the really cheap, like everyone keeps pointing at customer service people or travel agents. These are very low hanging fruit for AI. But, what about incoming lawyers, people who have gone to law school for years and spent a ton of money to get a law degree, and they're typically going to come in as some sort of a research attorney or, an assistant or something. Big law firms are replacing those people now with AI. They don't need AI research assistants anymore they don't need human research assistants. AI does a better job at researching prior case history, and it does it very quickly and at a much lower cost, obviously. So if you don't have lawyers coming into the bottom end of the ladder, what's going to happen 20 years from now when there's really no smart lawyers at the top because we've replaced them all with AI? So I don't know. There's challenges.
I can probably use AI to do a lot of basic legal stuff that I wouldn't have the knowledge about. Now, whether it's right or wrong is another question.
It opens another can of worms, though. That opens another can of worms because, like, imagine if every one of your clients that you walked into to do a demo or to tell them about a new product, they thought they knew more than you did about that new product. You know what I mean? Like, what if that client, and so that's happening with legal clients, with doctors, with lawyers. Like, I had this conversation with my doctor a few days ago. I went in and I said, well, here's what's happening. Here's what I've researched. Here's what I think is going on. What do you think? And so I think as a business person, doctor, lawyer, you should welcome that. You should welcome more engaged, more educated, more involved clients than just somebody who's oblivious and just goes, you need to tell me everything because I don't know anything right now. And you just need to. And by the way, like, it's not that I don't trust doctors or lawyers. I don't. But, I just think that as consumers and as humans, we should be arming ourselves with as much information as possible. And, the one caveat or warning I would issue would be just, verify, trust but verify that information, because ChatGPT lies a lot. And I've built a business around it. It even lies to us. So half of the stuff that I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on isn't building the AI. It's basically harnessing it and making sure that these AI tools don't lie and cause us a huge problem where we say that something's available and it isn't, or whatever, or issue the wrong pricing or any of those things.
We're talking about challenges. We talked about COVID. How did your business, you rely on events, you rely on those things to happen. How did your business change and adapt in COVID time, right?
Yeah. So I think, like so many companies out there, I think some just absolutely got screwed and it was terrible. And our industry was, I think everyone argues over what was the worst. I think we were in the worst industry. Absolutely. But it provided me personally a lot of opportunity. One, it provided me opportunity to connect with a lot more people because I was creating these weekly Zoom calls and all kinds of opportunities to get people together and to congregate and to help. I became very involved in helping as much as I possibly could. Not that I'm an angel or anything, but if I've got a toolkit and your car's broken, I'm going to help. I just, I want to help people. It's built into my DNA somehow. And so that became not only an opportunity just to help and to feel good about helping people. And in some cases, I think we probably, from a mental health standpoint, kept people from going down a terrible, dark path, And I say we because we did it as a group. It was a group that sometimes was 80 people or 100 people or 50 people or whatever. And we all talked to each other and we talked with each other and we developed solutions together and things like that. So I think that was a great opportunity. Secondly, it enabled me to really focus on rebuilding my beliefs of what my core business, GearSource, should be. And prior, we were not operating as a real marketplace, and now we were operating as a real marketplace. This COVID thing is absolutely going to destroy our business if we just sit here and do nothing. So let's at least do something with that time, make it productive as we can. And that was also the message that I always shared with people is, yes, sure, it's going to be fun and great to just take this as a time to exhale, sit on the couch, watch Netflix, and eat Cheetos. Great. But you're going to come out of it a worse person than you were when you went into it. And that was something that I just refused to do. So I wanted to come out a better person, a healthier person, but also a healthier business if I survived COVID. And by the skin of our friggin' teeth, we survived COVID because I'll tell you, I had a different set of challenges than other companies did. A lot of companies in our industry were using their assets as currency. They were selling off inventory to be able to keep themselves or their business alive during COVID. I didn't have that option. We don't have any assets. We're a software platform. And so I just had bills. I just had expenses, no assets. And so I had a different set of challenges, but I also had a different set of opportunities because those companies who were using their assets as currency were using us to help them find buyers. And so during COVID in our industry, you had the real needy people who were just like down and out screwed, but they had $1 million in inventory and they'd say, Marcel, what could you get us for this thing that I think is worth $100,000? And I'd say, I don't know, let me go fishing. And we'd go find somebody and they'd make a lowball offer of 75,000 and the guy would say, okay, I'll take it. And so you had the desperate people who really needed to sell off that inventory. And then you had some opportunists who had space and they had cash. And if you had cash and space, you could load up on gear during COVID. And again, you were going on the belief that this flu thing was going to be over at some point and that the industry was going to come back and you would need all this inventory. So it was a bit of a risk. And lo and behold, it worked out okay for those people that bought the inventory. So yeah, COVID for me certainly could have killed our business. I think if I wasn't as resilient and as stubborn as I am, it probably would have killed our business. But we survived. And then the hangover for us was different than the rest of the industry as well, because when shows came back, it didn't mean that our sales came back right away. So our sales still lingered. And then we had some other challenges and a massive software failure that cost us pretty much all of our reserve capital at that point. So it's been a hard go, I would say, starting in early 2020, lasting until today still. But we've become a much better business, a leaner business. We've figured out what the really important expenses are in our company and what those aren't. And some of that's around the people that we thought we needed and the people that we actually needed. Need creates a whole different dynamic for looking at your business with a magnifying glass and saying, do I really need that extra individual or that extra piece of software or whatever? Like even looking at your subscriptions, everyone is subscribed to 50 different things in a company or 100 different things. And you go, what do I use this piece of software for? And you look back and the last time you used it was 2023, yet you're paying $50 a month for it. That's silly, you know? And so $100 million companies might not think of those things. They think on a little larger scale. But for a little business like ours, we looked at a lot of those things and made our business leaner and not only survivable, but I think we're going to grow to become a much better, more profitable business because of it.
But you wouldn't have done that if you hadn't had COVID. So it can be a negative and a positive, right? You wouldn't have the time. You wouldn't have the time potentially because you'd have been busy 100%. And all that, right?
If I look back, I think that COVID was a net positive for my business and for me as a professional. I think I connected with more people that were more interesting, more whatever you want to call it, more impactful to my life. And from a business standpoint, I think that if I didn't change the things that I changed, the business was going to die without COVID because I don't believe in the old way of these marketplaces operating. And, you know, I'm going to probably piss off a lot of marketplaces out there who are listening to this right now. But I believe standard old school marketplaces are going to be dead in a few years because their AI creates a whole different level of discovery and you can find anything. It's Google on steroids. And so why do I need a specialized marketplace if I can find it without that specialized marketplace? So we are developing tools into GearSource now that are just going to be game changing. And it'll buy us another probably 10 years of longevity. And then we'll see what happens 5-6 years from now. Maybe we need to evolve again. But so, yeah.
During that time, though, did you find your attitude to risk, if you look at the Marcel of 2019, October 29, let's say, and the Marcel of 1st of January 25, has your attitude to risk and business changed because of that? Or do you think it's...
Yeah.
Or do you think it would have changed anyway?
You know, I was always a cutting edge, on the edge, flying by the seat of my pants innovator. I've always been that person. And one thing I would say is that I'm trying to curb that a little bit now, even though I just built the first AI company in our industry. I'm trying to curb it because the problem is, if you're constantly spending your profits as a company on innovation, you never collect as an owner. And when you start a business, part of the reason you start that business should be to improve your life as the owner. You want to improve your life. You want to fortify your life with additional money, additional time to spend with your family or whatever. And I've basically given away both of those things. I've spent all my money and I've spent all my time on these businesses. And so COVID taught me, I think, that there are more important things out there too that you also have to focus on, health being one of them. And, you know, I'm a huge advocate of keeping and making yourself healthy. You know, you only have one, you know, truck to drive until the end of your life. You want to keep it in shape and keep it clean and polished and air in the tires and everything else. And sadly, both of us know a lot of people who haven't done that and who are seeing the dark side of all of that, or they're gone, sadly. So yeah, I mean, I would say that those are some of the big changes for me, is that I really am focusing. And I know you've got some rapid questions, and I don't want to answer one of your rapid questions by saying too much here, but yeah, I just think that I've evolved as a business person to, you know, just paying a little more attention to what I've actually got right now instead of just constantly thinking, what's up there around the corner? Look, you know, whatever, squirrel. So.
And would you say that was your heart in business? As you said at the start, you've done lots of things from being in the band right through to where you are now. Would you say that was your hardest period of business as a whole? Or do you think you faced tougher challenges as part of that before that?
No, certainly the last, specifically at the beginning of 2023, believe it or not during COVID, not even just after COVID. It was sort of people talk about long COVID. I have, you know, long, slow COVID, I think, from a business standpoint. We partnered with a significant software company in 2022, we were doing very well in 21 and 22, and we partnered with a software vendor who almost killed our company, almost completely bankrupted our company. It just failed in a massive way. We lost our audience, we lost our traffic, we almost lost our company completely, and it took every bit of my energy and my ability and my cash and everything else to keep the company from absolutely disappearing. And I would say that is the two hardest years of my entire career from a business standpoint. I learned 1,000 valuable lessons. The biggest lesson to me really is always focus on the customer. Always, always, no matter what is happening in your life, no matter what is happening in your business, no matter what bad things have gone wrong or what your bank is doing or this is doing or that is doing, always focus on your customers and focus on trust, focus on just taking care of them and doing, help more people and you'll make more money is really, it's always been my mentality. But as a business, I think I allowed my business to slip away from that and to really focus maybe on profits or focus on other things and to not forget about the customer, but to take emphasis off the customer and put more emphasis on the business itself. And that was not a good thing. So I'm all in on the customer right now.
Without customers, we don't have business. So it's a simple thing, but sometimes you forget it. You get supply chains, sales, this and this number. You've got to do that, and you've just got to get the customer happy.
Well, and
that's what matters.
I would think, without getting too far into it, I would think that for you, that's always a big issue because the larger the company, generally, the further you get away from that feeling for the customer. And I'm not saying large companies are evil. That's just not true. But I think as a large company, it's one of the hardest things to do is to keep that culture alive, keep that real desire to help the customer alive when there's layers of management and everyone has spreadsheets on their desk that you got to hit these things. These are the things that are most important to our business. And you're sitting there sort of near the front line thinking, no, these out there, these people using our products and wearing our t-shirts, those are the things that are most important to us.
I think it's an important thing. I think it's very easy being part of a big business and where you turn around and go, you forget about things and you forget about the basics. And I say to people occasionally, the show must go on. And it can be a cliche in our industry. It can be a bit cliche. And, I've done gigs where you're 5 to 7 before the curtain opens. You're still trying to sort out something that's gone wrong. But sometimes, it does become a spreadsheet. And it goes back to that point you're just saying, you forget about the customer. And that one thing that means they can't do X, Y, Z will perhaps affect that show, and then they'll never come back to you, and they'll never do that. And it's so vital, and you have to sometimes forget the spreadsheet. But I had an argument with my finance director about something, and he said, well, we've got to be a profitable business, we've got to make money. Yeah, that gig matters. That means that will happen, that will happen, that will happen, and in 6 months' time, you'll thank me for doing that gig, which cost a little bit more money. Yeah, it's hard. It's sometimes hard.
And in our industry, it's interesting because prior to private equity coming in, that was never a problem because we were just a bunch of crazy cowboy, business people who we loved our industry was built on passion and community really. And, everyone knew each other. Everyone loved each other. Everyone trusted each other. They hated each other like it was Hatfields and McCoys sometimes, but they always found a reasonable way to work together. I'll lend you my stuff. You lend it back to me next week or whatever. And so it was very community and very much focused on getting the show must go on, getting it done, all of that stuff. And I'm not putting down private equity because sadly it's entirely necessary in our industry now because the costs keep going up and the shows keep getting bigger and a small privately held company is not going to be able to afford 1,000 or 1,700 moving lights for a show. You just can't do it. Your bank's not going to lend you that much money. So, I think that what happens is the further away I think those decisions being made on the front line are getting from the decisions that are being made for financial reasons, the distance, the gap between those two creates mixed messaging and all kinds of challenges that didn't exist back then, because the same person going to the bank, putting the money in, taking the money out, asking for the loan used to be the same guy that was talking to, the customer saying, yep, we can do this, and there's a lot of distance between those two now, and a lot of different individuals with spreadsheets on their desks. So,
but I was thinking back to a company I worked with, and you'll know the owner, Simon Stewart. He started out at the back of a van, but you turn around and go, they all start with some lights in the back of the van. They put it into a garage. The garage gets full, so they buy a second garage. Then they get a third garage. Then they get a unit, and it's still that same guy who originally started as DJ or started as a lighting tech or whatever, just got more equipment, and then before you know it, they're looking at a 20, 30,000, 40,000 square foot warehouse, 10 million, 15 million turnover. And they're not, some of them have turned into business people, some of them aren't business people. But what you're getting now is the generation of people who are business people who are coming in and seeing this as a viable business, whether it is or isn't, to be discussed till the cows come home. But it's an interesting shift, because that generation of people who started with just a few lights and have built a business are moving on, retiring, selling up, passing away, sadly, and things like that. And it's interesting with the private equity, how that's changed the business and how the business operates. Right? It's grown up, been more professional.
Yeah, in some ways, it's definitely changed it for the better. And in a lot of ways, people like me who are older are very nostalgic about how the business used to be. And I kind of like the way it used to be a little bit better. If I'm honest, I enjoyed the trade shows more back then. I enjoy the crowd a little better, who I'm dealing with, the way that we're dealing with each other and things like that. So, I don't matter though, because I'm going to age out at some point in the next, God knows when. And someone else is going to be taking my role, or I'll sell to private equity at some point, and they'll take over. But, I just think that it's evolved, and we have to continue to evolve. The good news about it evolving is that it became a bigger industry, and that's a good thing. So
it's good for the punters. It's good for everything, right? The shows are better, production value is better, everything is more spectacular. You've had such a long career. I don't want to say too long, because that makes you sound old, Marcel. I don't want to do that. But your career, if you look back like 15 years ago, what would you wish you knew now that you wish you knew 15 years ago?
Could I buy Tesla stock or Apple stock or Google stock or something?
Or some Bitcoin.
I wish I knew how to buy stocks 15 years ago. I was never a stock guy. Actually, that's probably one of the lessons that I would have, is that I always have been a bit of a Yahoo when it comes to business, where I think, like, people would say, hey, do you invest in stocks? Do you invest in other businesses? Do you invest in this? And I say, no, I invest in me. Like, I invest in my businesses, in my ideas. And, hopefully I always have enough money to do that. Sometimes I don't. But that's what I invest in. I believe in me. I believe in where I'm going. And, now I would say the reasonable human, probably does a little bit of both. Like, you don't just go all in on your business. You want to de-risk. And I never de-risked. And I probably still don't enough today. And so de-risking is certainly one thing that I would probably look at if I knew that 15 years ago. Aside from that, I think I probably would have converted to a real marketplace business sooner than I did. I made the big conversion in 2020 when we relaunched at the end of 2020. And then have evolved it even more since then. Prior to that, I didn't even really know what a marketplace was. It was actually a marketplace that was talking to us about buying our company, Reverb. And that's who convinced me that we were actually a marketplace. We weren't like a sound or a lighting company. We were a marketplace company. And so when I began thinking more like a marketplace, I think things definitely evolved, and what was important became much clearer to me. And people. I mean, obviously, I've always known that people were important, but relationships, network, your community, social, having a social network, and I don't mean Facebook. I mean like a network of people that you can go out and have dinner or drinks with and communicate with, and people you can talk to about your problems or their problems. That's become much more important to me recently than it used to be 15 years ago. I mean, those are some of the things that come to mind, I guess.
Mm. And you talk about sharing problems and things like that, but what keeps you up at night now? Is it thinking about the latest AI thing, or is it the growing the business, or how do you cash flow that business?
That I'm not going to accomplish the things that I know I should be accomplishing. That I wake up every day just kicking myself for not doing more. And, I'm so driven, even at, an older age now. And I've always been driven. This is a long time ago, but when I was like 17 years old, I started listening to Tony Robbins, who had just started around that time. And it was a set of cassette tapes called Personal Power or Personal Power Within or Your Personal Power or whatever it was called. But whenever that set of cassette tapes came out, that's when I started listening to Tony Robbins. So whoever's listening, Google it and you'll be like, God damn, that guy's old. And
the fact you said cassette player or cassette tapes is the first
right. Yeah,
right?
This was long before CDs. And, so I've always been that guy who's super motivated and who feels a responsibility to change things, to impact things, to evolve things, to grow things. And I don't mean just my things. Like when I look at somebody else's business, sometimes people probably think I'm a blowhard and I stand on my soapbox and think I know everything. But sometimes I look at someone else's, whether it's their business or their marriage or their, whatever it is. And I'll just say, you know what? If you'll listen to me, I think I have a couple of ideas. And generally, I give way better advice than I think I give myself most days. I'm divorced, but I've fixed so many people's marriages, I just couldn't fix my own. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question or not, did I?
No, I think it's good. And on that point of you giving advice, to founders, if you've got somebody you meet, go to a trade show, right, and you meet somebody who's 25 and going, right, I like lights, but I don't want to go into putting them up. I want to go into a business. What sort of advice, not necessarily what would you give them to go and do, but what sort of business advice would you be giving to those people and going from the lessons you've learned?
Yeah. It's a great question.
Don't get involved in a pandemic. That's the first thing.
All of the advice that I should have taken, 30 years ago is probably the advice I'd be giving them. No, I would, first of all, I don't think it's a generic question or a generic answer. So I would have to have some context and some information. And so the answer would really depend on, because I'd ask them, what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? What are your personal goals? Because a lot of times people are oblivious to what it takes to start and run and bring a business from 0 to 1. And it takes just an enormous effort. It usually takes more money, more time, and more effort than you thought it was going to take times 10. And so if I ask someone just one question, what do you want to achieve from this business? Well, I want the business to allow me so that I can take 6 months of vacation every year. Like within no more than 3 years, I want to be able to take half the year off every year. You're not going to get that from a startup business. It's just, I don't know of any that are going to give you that unless you become a consultant and you live very frugally and you just take half a year's worth of earnings and spread it out over the next half of the year so you can go on vacation. But so really it's got to start with what they want. But I would say, if you're raising capital to start the business, raise twice as much as you think you need, because it always takes more money than you think it's going to. And for me, I knew nothing. I still know nothing about raising money because I've never really done it. But I knew nothing about it. So I just basically looked at, what do I got in my pockets? What do I got in my savings account? And what do I have in my house so that I can put a second mortgage on my house? And okay, so all of that combined is what I have in total that I can lose on this bet, this gamble. This is what I did when I started GearSource. And then I put some sort of lines in the sand and I said, okay, when we get here, which is 6 months, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to review and say, is it worth continuing? Am I seeing glimmers of light that make it worth continuing? And when I got to that 6 month part, for me, it seemed very promising at that point. And my second real checkpoint was in 1 year, I want to be able to replace my income or at least come very close to it. So if I was making $1, I want to get to $1 within 1 year. And if I haven't, then I'm going to reevaluate again. And, I always had the option of going back and getting another job or whatever. And before 1 year, I think in 9 or 10 months, I had replaced my income and also hired my first employee. And so, it worked out for me. But you have to be realistic. You have to be realistic about what your expectations are from that business. I would say, the other thing, and I notice this a lot because I get asked to mentor for these startup marketplace companies quite often, either through the software platform that we use. They'll send people my way and, say, can you help mentor this person? And I don't mind doing it. One of the things I will find is that they've got a vision, like, used cat toys. Where should I sell used cat toys? There's nowhere to sell used cat toys. Oh, scarcity. I better go and create a business around selling used cat toys. And the thing that I'll say to them is, what research have you done on the viability of the used cat toy business? Is it large enough where if you can get to maybe 5 or 10% of the total addressable market of used cat toys, is that going to be enough money for you to not only earn your own income, but to operate your business and pay employees if you need employees? And they'll be like, what? I'll say, okay, what do you think the used cat toy business is worth? Well, it's got to be worth 100,000. I said, okay, I don't know any business who gets 100% of a market. So let's say that you get really lucky and you get 30% of the market. That's $30,000. I'm just going to do some quick math in my head. It's going to cost you at least $2,000 a month to run this business with no employees. And so that's $24,000. That leaves you $6,000 more to either pay yourself, pay an employee, pay taxes. I don't know, that's not a lot of money. You might want to go get a job instead, it's just, so make sure it's a business. Make sure that it's something that's going to pay you enough money to reach whatever your financial goals are. And if it's not, find something different. Find something, because you have to start with a viable business, or else you're always going to be, battling from behind and fighting a lost cause. Like, you're just never going to get to $100,000 a year in personal income on a business that doesn't make $100,000 a year. It's just not going to happen.
And it's fine to have a lifestyle business. There's one of my favorite programs. One of my favorite programs is a Dragon's Den, which I think is Shark Tank in the States. And they have people coming in asking all for this money. And the dragons go, it's a great business, but you're going to make £40,000 dollars, doesn't matter, a year, and you need to pay yourself. This is not an investment for me, but you've got a great business. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you're happy with that, that's great. But if you want to get $1 million a year earnings, whatever, you've got to find as you said, usecattoys.com probably is not going to net you
correct
$1 million a year, right?
Yeah.
But it's the naivety of just waking up with an idea and go, oh, we can make lots of money. Well, it's going to be hard to get there, right? In today's world, especially.
Yeah. And so I had this conversation with somebody just a couple days ago. He said to me, Marcel, I'm sort of in transition. I've got a little bit of money. I want to start another business. AI's out there. All this stuff is out there. What should I do? And I thought for about 5 seconds. And I said, do you have any skills as far as like a trade sort of skills? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, like, are you good at electrical? Are you good at, anything like that? Are you good at, I said, find a dumb, boring business, start it, and then expand it. That's what I would do today. So I would go buy a car wash van from some guy who doesn't want to be a car wash guy anymore. And I have social media skills. I have business development skills. I have branding skills. I have AI skills that none of these car wash guys have. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the car wash brand. I'm going to have mobile car wash detailers that, you can order it from an app and it tells you how long, like the Uber of car wash, maybe a good business model, actually.
I was just sitting there going, this sounds like a good plan.
That's a good idea, really. Basically get people to sign up for it. And then, I'm sure there's one out there where you could go on an app and it'll say, yep, we'll have your guy there in 17 minutes. And then that guy gets paid from the app. And, so or, a dry cleaner, or, businesses that are not going to be replaced by AI or robotics. I would go out and start one of those businesses. And what you're going to do is you're going to build a powerful back end, back office system, marketing, branding, accounting, very, very efficient, very inexpensive, very good, and very scalable. And then you're just going to go buy a bunch of car wash vans, or buy a bunch of laundromats, or buy a bunch of whatever it is. And you're going to scale it wider, which, is obviously building a larger business. And because you're putting such a strong back office model and marketing and branding and all of those things, social media and business development and all of these skills that you've created in a much different industry, you're now going to apply to that boring business, and it's just going to explode. And so that's what I would do today. If I was starting in business right now and I had just been working for a tech company, making a few $100,000 a year, doing really well, and I got some savings and everything else, go buy a mobile detailing van, put massive amount of effort into creating a system and structure and platform behind it so that it's completely scalable, and go out and scale it.
We've got a boiler company. We have a boiler that needs to be serviced every year, and the service company, I use them because their tech is brilliant. I can WhatsApp them and say, my boiler needs service, or they send me a thing, WhatsApp, Jane, your boiler needs a service now. I always forget. And then I go, yes, do I want it? And then they will text. It will all be app-based or all be online.
Perfect.
Because it's a simple thing. Boiler services, it's not earning lots of money every year. It's not stunning. It's not brilliant, but it's a reliable business. They've monetized it by being tech. And it's
here's the other thing.
And everyone needs it, right? So
here's how I look at that. You're exactly right. That's a perfect business to do what I'm talking about, because you said it doesn't make a lot of money. Let's assume it makes 100,000 pounds a year in profit, right? Net profit. So you've paid all your staff and you're making 100,000 pounds a year. So my goal is to make $1 million. I need 10 of these boiler services, or I need 8 of them, and I need to make some better efficiencies, create some better efficiencies. And remember, anybody who's running a boiler company probably has no marketing skills, probably has no biz dev or sales skills, probably has no great accounting skills. They got their Aunt Betsy's the bookkeeper, their cousin Tom is doing a little bit of social media stuff for them after school, and so you can create a professional back office that lets you go out and acquire 8 of those companies. And, you can buy them probably pretty cheap, because this is where private equity guys make money and regular Joes like most of us don't. When you buy that one boiler company, and I'm going to use US statistics here, not UK,
yeah.
So let's hope it translates. But when you buy that boiler company, chances are you're going to pay about 3 times earnings or EBITDA. And so it's 100,000. So we're going to pay them 300,000 pounds, dollars, whatever it is. But what happens is when you scale it, that formula changes and the profit changes. So now by scaling this business and putting a good back office behind it, let's say that 100,000 goes up to 125,000. I now have 8 of them times 125,000, which I believe is 1 million. And, I'm going to get 5 to 7x now, because it's a larger business. It's making more money. It's at £1 million, which is a nice magical number where they all start to go, okay, this is a real business now. And so now if I can get 5 to 7 times, do the math. I'm getting 5 to 7 times 125 instead of 3 times 100. So even if I just build this thing for 5 years and then sell it, I'm going to make a lot of money on that. So this is another one of the things that I wish I knew 10 years ago that I know today, is that it's why private equity companies are so rich and why they exist, because this is what they do. They buy companies for 3 to 5x and they sell them for 7 to 10x. It's pretty straightforward.
And go and buy another one at three times and then sell it on. It's
rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat.
And how they make money.
Yeah.
This is called the Business Takeaway Podcast. So what do you think are your biggest takeaway? What do you think your biggest takeaway lessons are from your career in business?
In addition to everything we've just talked about, I would say, Yeah, I mean, again, take care of the customer is one of the biggest things. Focus on the customer.
So as you
Yeah.
alluded to, there are some rapid fire questions at the end
There
of
we
this.
go.
Let's go. Yeah, I know which one you're going to answer. One of them, which way? So Apple or Android?
100% Apple, but I want to give you a quick story behind it. So in 2004, I had been in GearSource for 2 or 3 years. And I come in one morning and I've got a server. This isn't yet cloud-based stuff. I've got a server in my office with all of our information on it. And I get like this blue screen thing, where it's like everything's gone. And I was like, what do I do? And I call an IT guy and he's trying to recover it and everything. And the last backup we had was a tape backup from and this is all stuff that probably younger people don't understand, but it's a backup from like 2 months ago or whatever. So long story short, I lost 2 months worth of data. And so I was talking to a friend of mine who happens to be in our industry called Marty Wickman. And he goes, what's wrong? You sound so stressed. And I said, I just lost everything. I lost everything. My computer just completely died and I lost everything. The IT guy can't get it back. I am so screwed. And he goes, how did you lose it? And I said, it was a virus. And he said, oh, well, get a Mac. And I said, why? And he said, Macs don't get viruses. I said, really? He goes, yeah, you'll never get another virus. I went and bought a Mac. I bought Apple stock. And I just said, I'm all in. I'm all in on Apple. I'm buying the stock. I bought the computer and that's it. And I've been that ever since.
I was PC. I was getting through a new PC every year. And then I went to do a production electrician job and everyone was on Mac. You just looked at production desk. It was just those little Apple glowing all over the world. And I was like, I need to join the club. And again, since then, unfortunately with my employer, I have an Android phone, but as you can probably guess, but everything else is Apple, right?
Yeah.
Let's move on. Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram or Facebook? What's your platform of choice?
Well, I get most of my news on Twitter. I don't have time to sit and watch the news most days, so I'll usually spend 10 or 15 minutes on Twitter. I've gotten my algorithm on Twitter down to where it gives me some of the sort of wingy stuff that I like from a political standpoint, but I get all the important news and stuff. Most of my business on LinkedIn and most scrolling on Instagram, I would say, like doom scrolling on Instagram. And just keeping in touch with family and friends on Facebook. So I use them all for different reasons and different amounts. And I try to keep them to a minimum because they're all cancer, in my opinion.
You can lose hours. Beach or city break?
Oh, I would say something in between, which would be mountains. So
you have some fine mountains in Canada. We can let you have that. Right?
Well, and it's just where my mind is at. I'm not a beach fan. I love being on the ocean, looking at the beach from my boat, but I'm not really into sitting on the sand. I get bored and it just doesn't do anything for me. I hate visiting cities. Even when I go to, big European cities and stuff, I'll spend some time in the city, but I want to get out to the country and see how the real people are and the little farmhouse restaurants and stuff like that. But I love the mountains. I love being in the forest. I love being in the woods. I love, hiking and biking and just open spaces. So mountains for me.
I know where you're going to say next, town or country. You're going to go country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was born in a town of less than 200 people, if you can believe that. And so I think in my head, age takes me back there. I'm always uncomfortable around a lot of people and stuff. So yeah, country. I love the country.
First class or save the money?
Well, I work for myself and I would say save the money except long haul. So I can't fly to Europe and coach. I just can't. And so I'll either not go, which is why I'm not at the ISE show this week. But I just can't justify spending a couple $1,000s to fly from Miami to Dallas or something. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's a 2.5 hour thing. I used to get upgraded every flight. I don't anymore. So yeah, I'll save the money.
Morning or night person?
100% morning.
Exercise or not?
100% exercise.
Exercise. I knew where that was going.
Every damn day, even on weekends. I love exercise and I hate when I don't do it.
Can you feel it when you don't do it? Do you mentally and physically?
Both. Absolutely. Yeah. Sleep, mentally, physically, what food feels like inside my belly. If I haven't exercised that day, it just feels like a rock. Exercise just makes everything better for me. My energy level, my mood. I can't not exercise.
Really agreed. Innovate or improve? Interesting.
That is a really great question because for me, the answer right now is both. I used to be all innovate and I I'd like to go all improve because it's much more profitable in a sense. But I just it's an intense burning feeling to innovate for me constantly. So I would say I've shifted from all innovate to sort of a middle ground, and I'm probably going to go a little lower on the innovating side and a little more on the improve side, because you have to at the end of the day make your business profitable, and then at some point dress it up nicely for the next operator to take it over. And I'm going to get to that point, I would say, in the next, I don't know, in the next decade for sure. Maybe a bit sooner than that, but so yeah, both.
Challenge the status quo or not to challenge?
I wish I was okay with the status quo. I can't not chase better ways of doing things. I can't not. It's whether something's sitting there on the desk and it should be over there because that would be more efficient. Like it's full on OCD for me. So I'm never okay with the status quo. Sorry.
I'm going to tell a fraction little story. Got some lighting in a lighting track, and it bugs me as a lighting guy that I wasn't properly lit. And I spent half an hour today really playing with this thing because I was just getting so fed up with the camera not adjusting. So I get it.
Yeah.
And if I'm standing at a bar, what's the drink I'm going to buy you?
Well, it used to be you pick. I don't care. I drink it all. But these days, really, it's red wine and probably only one glass. And if I'm having a big night, it might be 2 glasses. Sometimes a beer, but usually a glass of red wine. And I hate cheap wine, by the way. So don't buy me a cheap glass
I won't buy
of house red. No house
red.
red.
Nice.
Well, here's why.
Nice
It's not because I'm a picky bastard. I am sometimes, but it's because it gives me this death heartburn in the middle of the night. It wakes me up, and cheap wine. I mean, every time if I drink like house cheap wine, it gives me bad heartburn. So I gotta avoid it.
It's a hard life. You've got to buy the expensive wine, right?
Yeah.
There we go. Anyway, Marcel, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've gone on so many different tangents. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to catch up with you next time you're over this way or I'm over your way.
I can't wait.
It'll be
Look
great.
forward to it. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.